afternoon, and welcome to the final day, day 5 of the Z Jaipur Literature Festival. We're very excited to have you all here for this wonderful session. I would just like to say, if everybody, I know that we keep reminding you, but it really does, it's very important to please turn your phones to silent. It's a matter of respect for our presenters. And if you could please, if you have an urgent call, just take it outside. Very simple, no conversations in here. Just please, that would be very, very, very kind. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin. It's a tale of 3 sisters. And we have Dhruv Raj Sharma to present for us today, who is the pioneer of etymology education and revolution globally. He is the CEO of Logophilia Education, which is the world's only education organization through which he works with 57 schools and 21 universities in India, in the United States, and the UAE to promote the study of vocabulary, which is the most fundamental ability in students. So I will pass over to our esteemed panelist. Warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Laura. Ladies and gentlemen, hi. My name is Dhruv, which is Sanskrit, and means the pole star, the North Star. This is supposed to be the only star that does not change its position with relative to the Earth's position. So when you get lost in the forest, you basically look for Dhruv. So much for self-promotion. Okay, great. So I'm going to start you off with, Sunilji, if you could just have a visual of the slides, please. Yeah. I'm going to start you off with a very basic question. Do you know what that tree is? This is going to be an interactive session, so do you know what that is? That's a people tree. Fantastic. Do you know what that one is? Okay. And how about this? Yeah? Okay. So, my question to you is, which of those 3 trees is a fig tree? Sorry? There's one person saying all of them. So let's just put those visuals right up to you. There are 3, which is A, B, and C. And which of these 3 is a fig tree? One person is saying all. Do you agree with that? No? No? Yes? Okay. Let's figure out what that was. So I had gone to Ireland to study ancient classical Latin. Basically a crazy decision. Nobody should do that. And yeah, when I was doing that, I had just come back. I was taking a run in the Arboretum in Allahabad, which is a tree garden. There were trees that had names written on top of them. And this is what I saw. So, Sunilji, I'm getting some impedance. Can you please put the laptop closer to me? Yeah, this is what the people tree was. It said, Ficus religiosa. What came to my mind was, this is something that I had studied in Latin, which is that word. Ficus is a Latin word which means fig. That immediately got me thinking, so the people tree is supposed to be extremely significant to India, right? I did not know what that meant. So is that a fig tree, I asked myself. I went closer. I went to see samples of what this could mean. I saw fig-like fruits around the people tree with seeds scattered. It completely amazed me that I did not need a book to tell me that one of the most significant trees of my life was a fig tree. I was still in a bit of shock, went on a little bit. So, went a little further. Yeah, so essentially that meant religious fig. I'm getting a lot of impedance. Yes. Then I saw this one. It said Ficus bengalensis. Any guesses what a bengalensis could mean to you? What does that sound like? Yes, because this is the banyan tree. The banyan tree was supposed to have originated in Bengal, hence the name, the Bengali fig. So, again, ficus in Latin means that, again, suddenly the Bengali fig, and I did not know that the banyan tree was also a fig tree. What amazed me was that just knowing one single word, ficus, could get me to understand so many things. Can we just take a microscopic pause and fix this? I'm not being able to do this. I need this to work better. If you could just put the laptop closer to me, closer, A little higher. Yes, yes, that should work. So I started thinking about something which I later started to call the blind spot. I realized that I could see so much more meaning than meets the average eye. Let me give you an example. So here are three words. That is the first one. I'm sure that you've seen this somewhere before. That is the second. And then we come right back to this one. Again, there's impotence and it's not working. Yeah. My question is, which of these three words is connected? Can you spot a connection anywhere? No? Sorry? 2 and 3 are connected? Yeah? Now, how would you typically access this kind of a situation? So you're going to go to a dictionary. So I went to a dictionary, I looked it up. This is what the dictionary told me about sycophant. I get pretty mad when somebody asks me to look at the dictionary to understand a word, and I'll tell you why that is. This is very difficult to remember. A dictionary is supposed to be a reference book. It's not supposed to be a study manual. You refer to it to solve a temporary problem. It doesn't really help you learn it up. I looked up Ficunian. This is what it showed me. It said no entries available. It's a beautiful word, is Ficunian. Then I decided to do it my way.
Apparently, if you directed at the screen
No.
here.
I'm reaching out to the laptop, so
Yeah,
it's
but they're saying
nothing.
there's so much wireless. If you direct at the screen.
Okay. So that's so much easier to do, see? Now, sicko is Greek, meaning fig. Fent is Greek, meaning something that can be seen. There's a beautiful story around it. So figs used to be extremely valuable in days of yore. If somebody saw figs being smuggled, they would go and tell the king that there are figs being smuggled. That concept became the concept of chaplus, as they call it in Hindi, somebody who's going to prattle to an authority, and therefore it now means bootlicker. This comes from fig. I think fig is now the word of the day. So we're going to go to this beautiful word now. That's how Ficunian breaks up. While the fruit of the fig tree is extremely valuable, worthy of being smuggled, the wood of the fig tree is supposed to be absolutely worthless. And therefore, you're Ficunian if you're of the fig wood tribe, which means that you are completely useless. So all of these are actually related to fig. I discovered this concept of a blind spot. You know that there are so many things around, but you can't see connections. Spotting connections is what creates deep memory. If you can't see connections, you will never create deep memory. You will basically cram for exams. That started to blow my mind to such an extent that I decided to make a living out of it. I don't earn a lot of money, but it's fun. Okay, so there you go. Studying like this is something that we call etymology education, using etymology to teach in mainstream formats. Logophilia happens to be the only organization in the world that does that. That's my organization. So we come straight to the concept. And yeah, that's the word that we've been saying. It's a fantastic looking Greek word. It breaks up into two parts. Would you try breaking it up? First part, etym. Second part, what is ology? Yes. Yeah, exactly that. So if you're doing that, when you study something from its origins, that kind of study is called etymology. That's what we do here. So to do a small example, if I told you that the word graph was not just a pink sheet of paper that used to cost you marks in maths exams, graph is actually the Greek word which means to write. What would be the study of handwriting? Graphology. You can start seeing these connections. See, this is really simple. So I can tell you, there's something called polygraph. As soon as we say polygraph, you're studying a subject called psychology. I can tell you cartography, study of map making, that's geography. You can actually start seeing the connection of right in so many things because everything is connected. Seeing connections creates deep learning. Okay. So I'm going to start you off with two questions. Number one, there is one subject that they don't teach inside schools. That's my first question. Which is that subject? Number two, what is the most important subject you can study? Now we're going to pause question number one for now. We're going to jump straight to question number two. So here we go. what is the most important subject you can study? When you answer that question, you're basically looking at a subject that is common to all subjects. If you study this subject, life is going to become easier in all subjects. So here are your words. These are the subjects that we typically study a lot in school. There is something that unites all of these together. Yes? Is it that? That subject gets a lot of painful attention inside schools. You know what I'm talking about. What about that? Some people suggest it's computers. We say something slightly different. What is common to all of these subjects is that they're all written inside language. I don't understand how schools get into the business of making people become students without giving them the capacity to study. So language, and therefore that language for us is English for now. Smallest unit of English is those things. If you're bad at words, you cannot be a good student. You can be a good memorizer for now. I'm a great memorizer, but yeah, that's not how you do it. So whatever the subject being, they will always be united by words. The study of words is called vocabulary. And therefore, those two questions actually have the same answer. Ironically, the only subject that they don't teach in schools. There are 54 countries across the world that have English as an official language. None of these deal with vocabulary. Let's go further in this. So we come to the problem. So whenever I go to somebody and I say, I'm going to be teaching vocabulary, they get very excited. And they say, oh, so that means we're going to get brilliant at communication at the end of this, right? There's a problem with that. So schools actually think that vocabulary is good for communication. There are two kinds of vocabulary. We need to understand the bifurcation of this. There are two kinds of vocabulary. Vocabulary part number one is called active. These are the words that you use. So we have words like apple. We've got words like pencil or pen. These are things that we use on a daily basis. If you're more erudite, you could use slightly better words. This is what enhances communication. If you work on active vocabulary, you will get better at communicating. But then there's something slightly larger, which is called passive. So I don't think there's even a single person inside this room that does not understand the concept of photosynthesis. I'll be very surprised if you use that word on a daily basis. You understand it, you just don't use it. So that's passive vocabulary. That is what helps you comprehend things. The more words you know, the more books you can read. So if you understand a word, you can understand a phrase. If you understand a phrase, you can understand a sentence. If you understand all sentences, you can understand books. If you understand books, studies make sense. I come from a background of psychology. I have done 2 masters in psychology. Used to believe in the concept of giftedness, do not anymore. I don't think anybody is gifted in education. I think you can make people become gifted in education by at least giving them the first principle building blocks. If you're not giving them the words, how do you expect them to study anything? I get very angry about this. It's a problem. So second problem is that when schools try to teach words, their methods tend to go around the creation of memory, the forced creation of memory. Again, extremely angry about this. So it's a method called that. So they'll give you a kahani to read. When they give you the kahani to read, they will also give you a pencil. Go find difficult words. Once you found the difficult words, you make a list. That list is going to look something like that. Go look up these words inside a dictionary. If you find them, that's fine. If you don't find them, you sit and cry. It's extremely, extremely natural for somebody to look confused at the end of a process like that. See, when you come to school for the first time, you look very saf, sundar, and pavitra. You look like that. Then they start doing things to you. So they do this, they do that, they do all of this. It's excruciating. Am I missing something out? Am I missing something out? Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. Once they're done with all of that, you start looking slightly different, and life is never the same again. Okay. So schools have the gall to talk about aptitude. I don't know what aptitude is. Schools don't even know that the word aptitude and the word attitude are actually different spellings of the same thing. Yeah, they talk about aptitude. So this student has an aptitude for biology. I was told that I had no aptitude for biology. I have a brilliant aptitude for biology. Extremely. Number 2, schools advise people on how to study things. I don't know if you're not teaching them the words. I don't know how you're doing this. Number 3, schools have the audacity to make student comparisons saying this student is better than that student. All of this is done without teaching vocabulary. I'm visibly incensed about this. Okay, so That basically is the point. So, that being said, this problem is fairly serious. And what makes it even more serious is a number. It's that number. I'm sorry to make you wait. I'm not doing this on purpose, trust me. It's that number. That in Hindi is called 10 lakhs. English has those many words. It's the world's largest language. This is not the real size of English. The real size of English is 2 billion words. It's the world's largest language. It's just ridiculously large. Nothing should be that large. This is. English has 1 million frequently occurring common words that people are expected to find on the internet, in newspapers, in books, in Rozmarra ki bhasha. 1 million. We can do an entire talk on why English is so large, but let's not do that right now. A very logical follow-up question to that is, how many words do you know? Now, don't answer that. I've made this mistake before. So I was extremely happy one day. When I'm happy, I go to school. I went to school and I asked them that question, how many words do you know? There was a child who was even happier than I was. He sprang up and said, sir, 26. So at JLF, that joke is not wasted. Most places, that joke is wasted. Never mind. Okay. Yeah. Lots of linguists have tried to answer this question as to what is the number of words that somebody can know at the end of class 12 in India. This is what they say. It's right there. I'm going to assume that all of you know at least 10,000 words, therefore. How much of English, what percentage of English do you know then? English has 10 lakhs, you know 10,000. That's what school has sent you out with. What is the percentage that you know out of school? That much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my proud privilege to introduce to you the world's riskiest industry. You pay about 10 lakhs to learn 10 lakh words, which means every word is 1 rupee. They send you back with 1%. Let me put this in a slightly more graphic. Yeah, that's what that means. Which means that, consider the analogy of you buying a, let's say, an Nexa. So you go to a car and you say, I'm going to give you 10 lakhs. What is the chance of this working tomorrow? They say 1%. That's what that means. Okay. That is why people say children don't read these days. Why will they read if they don't understand? Who likes to read with a dictionary kept 15? If you read Charles Dickens, he uses 15 Latin words in a page. You can't read. It takes 4 years to get one novel to complete. Long story short, the most essential unit of knowledge, I'm saying this with a lot of arrogance, is words. If you know words, you can read stuff, you can remember things, you can recall things. So all of those, the 3 R's of life. But my personal favorite, you can apply what you understand. A lot of us have studied the Pythagoras' theorem. How many of you use the Pythagoras' theorem to actually enhance your life? Rhetorical question, nicely done. So basically, you can learn better if you know words. Now, so we come to why you're here. Those are 3 beautiful languages. Yeah, they're going to do a small little dance. And this is called The Tale of 3 Sisters. So let's get straight into this. We get into interactive mode again. What is the Sanskrit word for Saptam? And the 7th month in English is? September. Fantastic. What is the Sanskrit word for Navam? And the 9th month in English is? Think about what you're saying. Now, what you're saying is absolutely true. You're just following a different calendar. The calendar that we're following right now is the Gregorian calendar. The calendar before this was the Roman calendar. It used to start in March. And therefore, the 7th month was September. The 9th month was November. What is the Sanskrit word for 10th? Dashambar. It's the same thing. Now, this is the time when you start thinking that I'm a crazy person and you're not very far from the truth. Okay, so yeah. What is the Hindi word for? Now, I'm not saying Sanskrit anymore, I'm saying Hindi. What is the Hindi word for nav? And do you think of navigation? Do you think of navy, navi? It's the same thing. I'm coming crazier by the second now. What is this? Let's get serious about this. What is the Sanskrit word for? Sorry. Pad. Let's take a look at that. In Sanskrit, we call it pad. In Greek, we call it pod, as in what chemistry apparatus? Three-legged footstool, tripod. In Latin, we call it ped, as in what part of your bicycle? What is the base of a statue? Pedestal, person who walks with pedestrian. It's the same thing. Can you see the connections there? You got to start looking at it my way. What is the Sanskrit word for? Three, okay. And same thing in Sanskrit, exactly the same thing in Greek, exactly the same thing in Latin. So you've got triambakam, you've got tripod, and you've got trinity. And it's exactly the same thing. Coming across as crazy still? Let's do more. What is the Sanskrit word for? This is one of the easy ones. Of course, you've got matra, matra, meta. That's really straightforward. It gets a little intense sometimes. What is the Sanskrit word for? Yeah. You tell me what should be the cognate of that. Yeah? Now, Greek does not agree with this one, so you got ophis, which is not a good one. So, but Latin says serpent. Yes. That's herp. That's reptile, meaning a sneaking, crawling. The snake is actually ophidophis, ophidiophobia. So we're going to strike out the Greek part of it. Doesn't really correspond perfectly there. What's the Sanskrit word for? No, another one? Another one? Yes. So in Sanskrit we say Dev. In Greek we say Deus. In Latin we say div as in divine. Can you see the connections? They're right there. Now sometimes these connections will be transparently visible. Other times you'll have to dig a little deeper. Use imagination. What's the Sanskrit word for? Oh, we've done that one, sorry. So let's try something else. What is the Sanskrit word for? Now, can you pronounce that for me, please? I'm going to tell you that you're pronouncing it in English right now. This is a word that comes from both Greek and Latin. And in both Greek and Latin, if you had to pronounce this, the C would never be soft. So it's going to be a hard C sound. How would you say it now? Kenter. So let's put that up there. It's a curse sound. I'm going to say that in Greek and Latin, E is always pronounced as A. So you're going to start seeing that very transparently. And that is right there. There are times when you got to know a little more to see the connection. It's exactly the same word. I know. So it went into Dra. Maybe that was colloquial pronunciation. Maybe it evolved over time. Languages tend to evolve. These similarities that you observe are of two types. So there are words that will be transparently available. You saw the 333. You saw the matter, matern. There are times when you have to dig a little deeper, and there are two kinds of those things. Let's move further. So what's the Sanskrit word for? Yeah? In Greek, we call it nom, as in polynomial, as in astronomy, as in economics. Yeah? That's called a ting moment. You just had a ting moment. In Latin, we call that nom. So nomenclature. What is the Sanskrit word for? So we've got, and we've got. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. Yes. Yeah. Alternative pronunciations. So because these things have been anglicized, they get lost in translation. I'm going to do a long piece on this one. Yes. I know, I agree with you. And I'm going to do a piece on that right at the end as to why these things got lost in translation. Yeah, but thank you for pointing that out. What's the Sanskrit word for? This is a beautiful one. One more. A more basic one. There you go. Yeah? In Greek, what dinosaur are we thinking of? Tyrannosaurus rex, as in T-Rex. Now, Tyrannosaurus, tyran means tyrant. Saur means lizard. Rex is king, so literally tyrant, lizard, king. This was the king of the jungle. Beautiful words. You're missing out a lot of meaning if you don't know the essentials of Greek and Latin. In Latin, you call it reg. So, can you think of a word from reg? Let's kill the king to start off with. Regicide, king-like, regal, the tenure of a king, regime, where you signed up for the king's army, where you signed up for the king's army, register, the rule made by the king, regulation, what the king thought to be straight was considered regular. If you were differing from the king, you were irregular, and you went to jail, basically. So, yeah, sure. Just one more, I think. What's the Sanskrit word for? Now, there are times when you got to dig a little deeper to be able to see this. To know, sorry? Yes. So in Sanskrit, we call it G-Y-A-N. Some people in Hindi, this is where it gets interesting. Some people spell this as G-N-A-N. You've seen that in names of people that call themselves Pragyan. They will sometimes say P-R-A-G-N-A-N, and you can't argue with them because they're supremely right. But yeah, in Greek, that they call it nous. So if you have knowledge, you have gnosticity. Oh, yeah. Lots of time for questions. Seriously? Okay. Yeah. And of course, in Latin, you call it cognus. So if you see a person wearing a black kurta, before you start pelting this person with stones, you will know that person again, recognize, recognize. Okay. What's the Sanskrit word for? You've already done that one. Okay. So that, but you didn't do the Greek part of it. So in Sanskrit, it's nav. In Greek, it's not. Can you think of a word? That. And of course, that. This is a really cool one. Bhratra is how they say it in Sanskrit. When you say it in Greek, that one really doesn't, it's called adelph, that one doesn't become a cognate. But in Latin, it's called fratra. Can you think of a word? Fratricide, a group of brothers. Fraternity, those words come from here. So we come to the family, and why is this happening? So a lot of people think that this is a coincidence. What is that over there? Now, this is not pi at all. This is called Proto-Indo-European. If you ever notice, people in North India tend to sometimes be fair-skinned. And if you see that as a very small, trivial indication, they sometimes tend to look like Europeans. There are scientists who've been dying to prove this, and they've been able to prove this in very large measure, that the language of India and Europe used to be the same. Because of the absence of text and script, we don't have ways to prove this in very concrete terms right now. So we do something called backtracking. We do something called comparative analysis. And we study languages as they figure out. So when you see these commonalities in the roots, you know that they're sharing an ancestral language. You just don't have a very solid way of proving that. There used to be one common ancestor. For the sake of convenience, we call it PIE. PIE was definitely not the name of that, but we call it that. Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin were the three daughters of this language. Now, there are three people who helped us get to this understanding. The first one was British. This was the most popular, the strongest voice in the room. This is a name that I would like everybody to know about. If the British had not come here, maybe we would never have gotten to know about this similarity. This person is called Sir William Jones. He's one of my greatest heroes. I'm very proud of the fact that after him, maybe today is the first time when people are actually sitting and talking about PIE. People don't talk about this unless they're inside university classrooms. This is the 18th century. Was he the first, though? No, he wasn't. There was a person much before him that actually started to see these connections. Sir William Jones died in India. You can go and see his tomb in Calcutta. Still exists. There was this person, Van Boxhorn. This was a Dutch guy. And this was in the 17th century. He was the first person to start seeing these connections. We should be very grateful because this session would never happen otherwise. There was also a person who was a French person, again in the 17th century, who pointed out these similarities. Yes. How does this change your lives? Very quickly. So, English, to most people, is one dull, big language that you need to understand. And you complain about the fact that it's a funny language. There are songs that have been made on that. If you look carefully, English is 29% Latin. English is 29% French. English is 26% Old English, which is the mother of English. English is 6% Greek. English has 6% miscellaneous other sources. That's 96% of English. The remaining 4% come from the names of people. So there are times when people want their names to become words. Louis Pasteur is a great example. That's English. And therefore, if you have to fathom this extremely confusing mess, you got to know at least the basics of those major languages to understand what is happening, or you will always keep asking, why is the psychology P silent? I mean, that's a ridiculous question. It's a Greek thing. P always becomes silent in Greek before a consonant. There are things that you need to know, the school needs to tell you. So it's not a dull, boring language like that. It's a language that looks like this. If you separate the PIE part of this, 29% from Latin, 29% of French. French is the daughter of Latin, and therefore this is PIE again. 6% from Greek, that gives us 64% of English, which means 640,000 words inside English. 640,000 words inside English come from PIE, which means that 640,000 words in English are not alien to anybody in India. I'm saying anyone who studied Hindi should consider 640,000 words to be their own thing. This is like our own language. That's my question. My name is Dhruv Raj Sharma. I represent Logophilia. This is exactly what we do. We teach schools to study through etymology so that you can truly understand things and never call yourself an ungifted student. Thank you for listening to me.
So we do have time for a few questions.
I'd be very, very glad
Yes.
to do that. If there are any questions, I'd love to answer. Yes, ma'am.
How come you have put Rajan? It is Rajan, you said Raj. It is Bhrata, you have said something else.
Yes.
Those Sanskrit words have been twisted here. I don't know why.
Yes. And may I answer that, please? So, the words that you saw over there were not words, they were roots. Roots are not complete spellings, they are extracted versions of spelling. So, for example, the root in Greek is, the word in Greek is cosmos, but the root that we extract is only cosm. So you don't say microcosmos, you just say microcosm. So Raj is the root that comes from Rajam. I was not putting up words, I was putting up roots. Thank you for your question.
We have one over here.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Hello.
Hi, ma'am.
Yeah, congratulations, Mr. Sharma, for doing such a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And I must confess that I have realized the same thing doing etymology, and I have been teaching this at my own level in
Wonderful.
my schools. I was a school teacher.
Wonderful.
And you have pointed out certain roots here, like matri, patri, whatever. I can add a few little more.
Please.
And if you are doing, actually, if you are doing this to the students, it's really going to be easy for them to understand and learn.
Yes.
And I would like to ask you, are you also doing the prefix and suffix
Yes,
part?
yes, yes.
Are you doing it?
We have one entire
So
workshop
can
called
you
Wordsmithry.
can you please give me some words which is a complete set of root, prefix and suffix?
In what
And-
language do you want that?
English, of course.
No,
which
no,
is
that's not a language. Which Greek, Latin, or Sanskrit?
Which is originated from either of them.
Sure. So let's say
And it has that meaning.
yeah, yeah. So you're not asking for a trilingual comparison. You're just asking for prefix, root, and suffix, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got a word.
And it has its origin from that. Like, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you got a word which is called. I don't know if this is an irony right now. But yeah, can you see this? Okay, wonderful. Can we break this up into 3 parts? Part number 1 is called in. What is the last part? No. So we've got number 1, we've got number 2, and we've got number 3. The Latin root is called vis. Vis means to see things. So for example, the state of seeing things is called. What happens when you go to see somebody? Visit. Who is the guy who watches you from the top? Most people say God, I'm sorry. Who's the guy who watches you from the top? Supervisor. Literally the concept of overseeing, that's where that word comes from. What is the set of papers that the person asks you at immigration? I need to see it. Sure. So vis is a Latin root. This is a prefix. That's a suffix. Able is French, which means capable of. Vis is Latin, which means to see. In over here means not. That which is not capable of being seen is called invisible. Thank you for your question. Yes.
So I really like the work that you're doing,
Thank
and
you.
I really applaud the session that you just held.
Thank you.
So my question is that this kind of chart that you've drawn, a comparison of languages and how sort of one common language seeps into different cultures.
Yes.
How would we sort of apply this same frame or blueprint to Indian languages? As in maybe we have a root Indian language and then it sort of seeps into different cultures and becomes various languages like Kannada and Hindi and Khadi Boli and like in that sense.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend to answer that question because I'm not an authority on Indian languages. However, I will share an experience. So my experience is this, that I was traveling in Kerala. And my friend had to get married, which is something that we resent even today. And yeah, he said that you have to come to my Kalyanam. He said, you have to come to my Kalyanam. Now, because I know that Kalyan in Sanskrit means welfare, I was like, what is going to happen to you for your good? I mean, I failed to see the connection. But he quickly reminded me that Kalyanam means marriage inside Malayalam. So there are people who would fiercely contest this and say that that's a Dravidian language. How dare you talk about Sanskrit in my part of the world? But I know that Kalyan means welfare, and metaphorically it means marriage inside. So there are lots of things that happen across these languages that you can very easily see. Any word that ends in puram basically comes from pur, which is a unit. So pur in Greek means polis, as in cosmopolitan, metropolitan, which means an area of government. And puram is a sheher. So even if you have, I don't know, any of these purams, it's all Sanskrit at the end of the day. And you can transparently see that. Thank you for your question.
We have a young boy just here.
Is there any actual text or evidence that the three languages are connected?
So that's what I said, because script was not invented in those days. We use a method which is called comparative linguistics or comparative analysis, in which we compare languages and see if we can find similarities. The similarities here are mind-boggling. An entire book can be written on these. So, yeah, I mean, when you say that you have a dvandha, you see dva meaning two, which means you are in two minds, and that takes you to dual. And yeah, there are lots of these things that it's just very evident. We feel extremely frustrated that we cannot prove it in their faces.
We have time for one more question.
Yes, please. Before you start, may I know your name, please? Ananya meaning?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm just showing off, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my question is, I don't know about Greek, but in Latin, and when we study sentence formations, so the way the words are put, like sometimes the verbs are before pronouns, and it's very complicated when we translate it into English. So how do you all do it? Because it's very, very difficult when you do it. And there are certain times when one particular
So that's called
word-
an essay type question. I'm going to cut you short because my time is in front of me. They'll throw me out. Yeah. We don't do it. We never do it. Hindi is a verb final language. Latin is not. You take 2 steps forward and 4 steps backward. When I was studying Latin, they lost me in the first 7 days. I essentially then took up a dictionary, made a list of all the words. I can understand about 200,000 words in Latin. I don't care about the grammar part of it. I am vehemently against this, the the use of grammar inside schools. It's step 2. They're teaching grammar without teaching step 1, which is vocabulary. I don't endorse the practice of people learning grammar inside schools. Grammar is taught because it's easy to teach. Thank you.